here to FanFest, our National Baseball Hall of Fame display here. Pretty amazing everyone watching us here on Facebook as well as a live audience. I'm Alexa Datt of MLB Network, and we are so happy to have you here with a four-time World Series champion and Hall of Fame inductee. Give it up for Jack Morris. All right, Jack. 2 weeks from today, you're going to be on the stage at Cooperstown, and your life is going to be changed pretty much forever. It's going to be something that I know you've thought about for a really long time. Let me start with this. How does Hall of Famer Jack Morris sound to you?
I'm still trying to adjust to that.
Sure.
You know, it's overwhelming, the response that I've gotten this winter up until this point, and I hope I'm as relaxed and calm on stage in 2 weeks that I am right now.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're relaxed because we have a bunch of questions to get through. We're going to talk about your Hall of Fame career. I do want to ask, though, as you prepare for the Hall of Fame, how is that going? How's the speech writing going? Where are you getting advice from?
Well, I was able to pull up on YouTube a lot of the previous speeches. I think that helped me a lot to just get a feel for what guys say and how they go about it. There's a variety of different personalities, obviously, and there's a variety of different speeches. But, you know, that's where I started writing. I wrote the whole thing myself and then presented it to a couple friends I trust who are world-renowned speakers. And they pretty much told me to rip it up and start all over. It wasn't quite that bad, but they suggested a bunch of things to change. And I bet I've changed that thing 100 times in the last 2 months. But, you know, my wife helped me type it out, and I've been practicing reading it. And it is what it is. It's not going to be anything revolutionary, but it's a little bit of a reflection of my life in baseball.
Can you give us a sneak peek for all the people that are here today and watching us on Facebook? Maybe just either a couple people that you're going to mention or the tone of the speech?
Well, you know, for me, I started writing, literally started writing. And bear in mind that the Hall of Fame suggested that we all try to stay under 8 minutes because there's so many of us going in, which I totally understand. But how do you tell your life story in 8 minutes? How do you tell your story of 18-year in the big leagues and, you know, 30-plus years of playing baseball in 8 minutes? So I just started by writing down names of people I wanted to thank. And then I read them back to myself, and that took 22 minutes. So I can't thank anybody. You guys, I don't like anybody, and I don't need anybody. Yeah, right?
You can thank them all here, and that will suffice.
That's the thing. You've got to try to pick out the people that meant the most to you. And so obviously family's a part of it, like all inductees. They talk about that. But I'll go through each individual team and try to tell a little bit of story of what my career meant to me with the people that influenced me from each team.
And we're going to try and get to some of those stories today. Take me back to the moment where you found out you got the call that you were going to be a future Hall of Famer.
Well, I was at the winter meetings down in Orlando. I work for MLB.com with you, and I was already down there because that's part of what I do every year. And I was prepared by friends of mine from .com that this possibility could happen. But you got to understand, I'd been through that 15 years on the writer's ballot, and then, you kind of get used to the fact that it doesn't happen. And I had pre-programmed my mind to just accept and say the same things I've said for many years, how grateful I am for what I've accomplished, and I'm not overly concerned about it. I don't take it personal. All the things that I was prepared to say, and then the phone rings, and it's Jane Forbes Clark, and she lets me know that I've made the Hall of Fame. And I have to be honest, I was so full of emotion, I don't even remember what I said to her. It was pretty overwhelming, but very grateful for that call.
Well, good thing we have the entire thing on tape, so you can go back and relive it as many times as you want. What was the first thing that went through your mind when you got the phone call?
Well, Jane had asked me, because of the timing of the way they announced it, MLB was going to announce it at 6 o'clock. This was at 5:45 when she called me. And she had asked me to stay in my room and don't talk to anybody for 15 minutes because they wanted to make sure that MLB Network would be the first to announce the members. And I sat there for 2 minutes and I said, by God, if I can't call my wife and family, then I don't want to go into the Hall of Fame. So I called them.
Well, good. And what did they say? What was their reaction?
Well, everybody, it was teardrop soup, really. It was, everybody was so emotional and excited. My family was, my wife and son, Miles, were back in Minnesota, and immediately they decided that they were going to get on a flight as soon as they could to get down to Orlando to be a part of the celebration. And the next morning, in the middle of one of my conferences, my two older sons from Michigan surprised me, and they flew down too. So that was like super special for me.
Pretty incredible. How many people are you going to have with you upstate? I know there's a certain allotment of tickets that you get, but I know it's going to be a special moment, and you're going to want to share that with as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got over 35 family members coming, which is pretty impressive, considering several of them are not in the best of health, and you know, it's a long way for them to go. Cooperstown, a lot of you folks know, is not an easy place to get to for a lot of people, so just making that trip means a lot to me. And then numerous friends and acquaintances from the three major, you know, 4 cities that I played in. So a lot of people. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's pretty exciting. You get any special perks now that you are a Hall of Famer? Anyone treat you differently in your family?
No, not my family, no. No, and I'm grateful for that. That's the most humbling part of it. You know, I've gotten so much more attention from people, and people that have probably looked at me the same way for years, but now they can come up and congratulate me. It's kind of almost, I almost feel better for them than I do myself, because there's so many people that I know were pulling for me and were in my corner, and they kind of kept being puzzled by the whole thing. And when I got in, it was almost like they were happier than I was. It's hard to even describe, but it's really neat that there's so much love from friendships and loved ones.
So let's talk about some of the stories that you possibly could get into during your speech, some of your favorite memories. Let's start in Detroit. 14 years there, and I know obviously it's hard to pick 1 or 2 things that stand out to you, but if you really have to sum it up, what would you say your time there meant to you?
Well, that's where everything was taught to me. The game of baseball at the professional level was taught as a member of the Tigers. I was fortunate. I only played 1 year in the minor leagues there, 2 different teams, AA and AAA, but a total of about 1+ years. And then I got a chance to play in the big leagues when I was young, and I had to learn a lot of things. And I think a lot of us guys that came up at that time learned together. We took a spanking quite often from the better teams in the league. But eventually we figured things out, and you know, when I look back at my Detroit years, the run we had in 1984 was a run that'll be remembered forever because of what we accomplished. To go wire to wire in first place, to never lose first place from day one, 35-5 starts, 17 straight on the road to start the season. Those things are magical. They don't happen every year, and I'm proud to say that I was a part of that.
So are you going to tell the helicopter pizza story? Or
no, I don't have time. I can't tell every story. If they let me tell stories, I could be up there for 6 hours.
Okay, but you can tell it to our audience today, right?
The helicopter story. Okay, so we win the World Series in 1984, and those people in Detroit, you probably remember this. For a lot of people, you might not. There was a lot of fans outside the stadium that couldn't get in, and there was a bunch of rowdy people, let's put it that way. They were looking for a reason to create some chaos, and you know, alcohol was consumed, I'm sure, and all of a sudden we find out there's a taxi tipped over, that they had tipped over a taxi, and then we found out that the taxi might have been on fire and that there was a cop car tipped over, and blah blah blah, and you know, basically a mini riot outside the stadium. So security wouldn't let any of us leave the stadium. They came up to us. We were there about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they told us that you know, it's not safe to leave. You're going to have to stay inside until they get things straightened out outside the stadium. And ironically, they were running out of food, and there was a lot of people. All our family members were in there celebrating with us. All the press were upstairs, and they didn't have any food. So within a matter of minutes, a phone call was made, and Tom Monahan, who owned Domino's Pizza, had his pilot fly in with his helicopter to order pizzas, and I happen to know his helicopter pilot. And he walks into our locker room, and I look at him, I go, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "The chopper's outside right now on second base," and he says, "We're leaving to go out to Ypsilanti to get a bunch of pizzas to bring back for everybody." I looked at him, I go, "Can I go with you?" And you got in mind, I'm still in my uniform pants, socks. I've got a T-shirt on, and that was about it. Flip-flops. And he says, "Get out there. We're leaving in 2 minutes. Don't tell anybody." All right. So somehow nobody even knew that a helicopter was on second base because we were all inside in the clubhouse. So I run out through the dugout, and sure enough, there he is, and we kind of duck down, gets it started, and we take off right above Tiger Stadium, above the lights, everything. And I look down, and I'm seeing all this chaos, and I thought, Jesus, this is insane. So we fly out to Ypsilanti, which is only about a 5-minute flight, and we order 32 pizzas. So the whole back of the helicopter, that's why he didn't want me to tell anybody. We filled up the whole back of the helicopter with fresh pizzas. But as we're landing in this parking lot of this pizza franchise, people started coming out, and they're, trying to barricade anybody from getting close to our landing zone. And I walk out, and I still got my uniform on. If you could see the expression of those employees at that pizza place, it was priceless. And, we got the pizzas and flew back. And then, of course, when I got back, I had teammates telling me that I was number one, if you know what I'm saying, because I didn't invite them with them.
I love it. And the fact that that's something that you get to, cherish and take with you for the rest of your life and tell on stages like this for the rest of your career is pretty impressive. So we have fans that are joining us on Twitter and that have, sent questions in, and I want to interject those throughout the day here. And one fan named Jay on Twitter wanted to know what it feels like to throw a no-hitter.
It's a special day. I've always said perfect games and no-hitters involve a lot of luck. You've got to really be good. You've got to really have everything going for you. I say the stars have to be lined up and all that, but you still have to have a bit of luck. And I had some plays in that game that, defensively, my teammates never did before. And, it helped me to realize how special the day was while I was going through it. And then, of course, the hardest part about throwing a no-hitter is how much it's going to cost you that night or the next day when you take all your teammates out to dinner. But we partied. We were in Chicago, and I don't know if you realize it, but those bars stayed open real late.
Oh, I'm sure. We
had a day game the next day, so I'm sure there was some hurting boys that had to play in that game the next day. But we won, so we can always say that somehow we found a way.
Pretty incredible. Where does that rank for you in your career accomplishments?
It was a fun day personally. It's one of those self-rewarding type days, but I can't compare it at all to the value of winning a postseason game or being in a World Series. We all start in spring training. Every team starts in spring training with this eternal optimism that you're going to be a world champion, and that's your goal all year long. You want to get to the World Series. And I was fortunate enough to be on 4 different teams that did that, and we won them all. So I don't compare my personal fun day in Chicago with any of those postseason games.
Going 4 for 4 in the World Series, pretty impressive. One of the many reasons that you are a Hall of Famer. You're going in with a pretty big class. Yeah. And anything that you can say and speak to in terms of your other fellow inductees?
Well, I am so lucky to go in with my teammate, Alan Trammell. It's, we signed the same year in 1976. He was a kid out of high school from California. I was a kid out of college. I went to school at Brigham Young University, and we were, shortly after the draft, we were united in AA in Montgomery, Alabama. Alan went down to A-ball for about 2 weeks, I think. I don't know exact details, but he came up, and we were teammates right away in Montgomery, Alabama in AA ball. And I'll never forget the first time I met him. Here's this skinny little kid with long hair, and you ask him, where are you from? And he says, California. And you kind of go, no kidding, And I thought immediately, okay, how long have you been surfing? And all those stereotype things that you would think. And when you talk to Tram, you realize he had no interest in anything but baseball. Baseball was his passion, his love, and you could tell right away that he had a mindset that was different, that he was going to be successful no matter what. He wasn't, neither was I. I was terrible when I started. But, we immediately had a friendship that lasted lifetime, quite honestly. So to go in with him is special. I played with Jim Thome. My last year, I was with Cleveland in '94, the strike year, and Jim Thome was a young player And, you know, back then I realized this kid was special, that he was humbled, he was eager to learn, he was strong as a bull naturally, and you knew that he wanted to absorb all your knowledge so that it would be implied into his life, and I can't tell you how much I respect him. Now, the other guys are all National Leaguers. I didn't really get to know much. I know them like you do as fans, but I'm proud to say that they're all guys that are way deserving of being Hall of Fame, and I'm excited to get to know them and share the whole week in 2 weeks with them, and I'm sure a lot of other experiences along the way.
In 2 weeks, we're excited for that as well. We're looking forward to that. Coming up this week, we obviously have All-Star Week, and that's why we are here at FanFest. Really excited to see a lot of this young talent. You are a 5-time All-Star. What does it mean to be an All-Star for you?
It's a heck of a lot of fun, and I can promise anybody that has this question in their mind, do they go out and play 100%? Absolutely, because pride takes over. We're all egomaniac, alpha male, number one, guys, and we all believe we're good, and there's nothing we despise more than having somebody else say that guy's better than you. I mean, that's the nature of pro athletes. I don't care what profession it is. So for guys to say they're not going to play the best, when they get in the game and their number is called and they're out on the field, adrenaline takes over, and you cannot help but play your best. Now, I know there's a lot of young guys that are nervous. I went through that myself, experiencing it the first time. You're nervous. It's human nature. But I think you can find peace with what you've accomplished to get there, knowing that you belong there, and that takes over too. So it's a lot of fun. It's a big honor, I think. I never turned one down. I thought it was my responsibility to represent a team that I was playing for. So it was an honor for me to play in them. What's your favorite memory from All-Star Week? The first one, because it was the welcome back to baseball after a 2-month-long strike in 1981. Baseball was shut down. I went through 6 labor disputes in my career, and I'm not proud of any one of them. I wish it never happened, but that one really hurt because the baseball was shut down. And to bring back baseball, they decided to bring it back with the All-Star game as the first game. And I was chosen to start for the American League, so I got to throw out the first pitch in front of 80,000+ people at the old ballpark in Cleveland. And I had never pitched in a venue that large with that many people. It was overwhelming. I had played in Cleveland a couple years because I had been in the big leagues a couple years before that. And I played in that stadium for several more years and never, ever saw it completely full like that day. So to see that place full that was worth the price of admission itself. All right, so let's take a moment here to talk about current day baseball and kind of the landscape of baseball. From when you stopped playing to today, what's the thing that surprised you the most about the game? I don't know as though I'm totally surprised. I've seen the transitions. I've seen the rule changes. I've seen the implementation of review, where they can go, a manager can ask to have it reviewed, a play be reviewed, and the ramifications of having that and the consequences of that being challenged and overturned, which can change the outcome of a ball game. So there are things like that I agree are good. I've been spending, since its inception, my entire time in baseball looking for Mr. Pitch Count. If anybody here knows who Mr. Pitch Count is, the guy that invented that idea, I would love to have a chat with him, and I've been looking for him, but nobody wants to claim credit for that. So somehow it was adapted unilaterally by baseball, and it's implemented in the minor leagues for sure. Nobody's going to pitch over 100 pitches, but for 100 and some plus years, baseball was just fine without Mr. Pitch Count. So I want to talk to this guy. All right, we got another fan question here. This one is from Ray. Put yourself in the AL East as a member of the Yankees or Red Sox pitching staff. What would you be thinking about going into the second half? Well, I think both teams visualize that they're both going to be in postseason. Now, they both want to win the division because they're in the same division, and I'm sure it's a competitive rivalry. It's always been, but, I think this creates a better rivalry when both teams are great. I feel like they're going to both be in. One of them's going to be the wild card. One of them's going to be representing the Eastern Division. But you as a player, you just want to go out there every time and do your best. You want to win. Winning is what it's all about. I get a kick at all the analytics and how important everything is, and its impact in the game. But it's never been about numbers. It's always been about letters. W and L. That's all that matters. When it's all said and done, numbers don't matter.
All right. I think there are people out there that would beg to differ, but hearing
Yes,
it from
they
a
would,
Hall of Famer.
but they're never going to convince me.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Do you remember a time in your career where the AL was as top heavy as it is now, where you have these teams, that are just so dominant?
Yeah, I think during my years in the big leagues, for the majority of my years, there was about 5-6 really good teams, and the rest were somewhere less than that. And for the last maybe at least a half a decade, under the guidance of Commissioner Bud Selig, parity was the word that came out in baseball a lot, that every team on any given night could beat any other team, and you saw a lot of teams with the same record, and a lot of people thought that was good for baseball because everybody had a chance for postseason. But I personally believe it's better when you see good teams. I want to see good baseball. I don't want to see average baseball. And right now the Yankees and the Red Sox, and of course the Astros, the defending world champions, Seattle Mariners in the American League, those are all good baseball teams. And so when you go to the ballpark to see them play, you're seeing very talented teams that know how to play the game.
All right, it's Hall of Famer Jack Morris prediction time. If you have to predict who is going to be in the World Series this year, pick one team from the AL and one team from the NL, and then who wins it all, what would you say?
Well, it's hard for me not to think that Houston's not going to repeat or at least be back. And I say that because of the talent on the field, but more importantly, the starting pitchers they can throw out 3 days in a row, and maybe 4 if they have to. They've got the most depth and experience now with their starting pitching. And I know the bullpen is a huge part of the way the game's played, especially in postseason, but I have a feeling that Houston's going to go out and pluck somebody's stopper, some closer, and bring them into the fold. I love the Yankees. I love what Boston's doing this year. They're a great team. Mookie Betts is emerging as one of the great players of his generation. But I just can't help but think when it's all said and done, pitching is what's going to make the difference.
All right, and then in the National League? National
League is a little bit harder for me to predict right now. I don't know if somebody from the East, Atlanta, Philly, are for real. We're going to have to play out the second half to see if Washington gets back in. They, with Strasburg healthy and Scherzer, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch themselves. But Strasburg's been pretty banged up throughout his whole career, so you don't know how durable he's going to be. The Cubs are played well. The Brewers, I think, are for real. They have some charisma and magic going, so it could be a flip of the coin in that division. And, the West, we don't see a lot of that. Living in Minnesota, I don't see a lot of the West. I don't see the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. I don't know where that's going to all unfold. The Diamondbacks probably have the best team right now. And to answer your question, I don't know who to predict, so I just guess. But I'll guess that it's going to be either the Cubs or the Brewers. I just feel like they're gonna find out a way to win it.
Wow. All right. So the team in the NL comes from the NL Central. Pretty interesting. Another fan question. You mentioned pitch count. This is from Sean Harold. He said, what do you attribute to being able to go deep into games, and not only just you, but pitchers of your era?
Well, that's what we were told to do. That's what we were taught to do. That's what we were given the opportunity to do. And I think the biggest difference in today's generation versus our generation is when I came to the big leagues, we had 9 pitchers on our staff, 5 starters and 4 guys in the bullpen. Nowadays, they have 14, 15 pitchers on a staff. I mean, the bullpen's bigger than most small armies. So, they're going to use all the guys. If they're paying them big league salaries, they're going to have to use those guys. And I think the reason starters had more value back then is because most guys in the bullpen were failed starters. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just the reality of what happened in that generation. There's kids today that never start. They are groomed from high school on up as relief pitchers. And so they're specialists. They're good for 1 or 2 outs, one inning maybe, 2 innings at most. That's changed the dynamics, the way managers manage the game. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences in the way the game's played.
All right, this one comes to us from AA. He said, what team gave you the hardest time in your career?
Well, there's several teams that I think if you look at my record, I had losing records against. Milwaukee comes to mind, Boston, New York. They were all good teams in those days, just like they are now.
All right, sounds good. It's time now to play this game that I love to play. It's a rapid-fire game called Game of Questions. So you answer, yeah, you love playing this. No, he absolutely hates playing this. Every time I bring it up, he gives me that same eye roll. But we're going to do it here for this audience because it's a pretty special treat. All right, toughest batter you faced in your career?
Over my career, I got to define this. One at bat or an entire career?
An entire career.
Okay,
Let's do
George
that.
Brett.
Okay. Favorite ballpark?
Oakland Coliseum.
Favorite ballpark food?
Hot dogs.
How do you take a hot dog?
Mustard and onions.
Mustard and onions. Cooked onions, raw onions?
Yes.
All the onions. All right, sounds good.
Not bad. I mean, onions are good.
What is your hidden talent that no one knows about?
I have sung in a duck blind in Tilbury, Ontario, the greatest rendition of the Canadian national anthem that the world never has heard.
Can you give us a little taste?
No. It was a one-time event.
I knew that was going to be the answer. The athlete that you looked up to growing up?
There was a lot of them. And it changed as I grew through baseball. But as a kid in Minnesota, everybody loved Harmon Killebrew. He was bigger than life for us.
Favorite manager or coach?
God, I love them all. And I don't want to put in one over the other. But if I have to, Sparky Anderson, because I spent 10 years with the guy, and he taught me so many things.
If you were pitching today, the hitter that you would least like to face?
Jose Altuve.
Ooh,
Strike zone's this big.
The most dominant pitcher in the game today?
Max Scherzer.
If not a baseball player, you would be doing?
God only, I have no clue what I'd be doing. You know, I had that discussion with myself in college, and I decided that I was going to be a baseball player. That's why I went to college, and I exposed myself to a great opportunity to get to pro ball. And then in pro ball, I went through a failure early, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go back to college and study, and I'm going to have to make a decision on what I'm going to do with my life. And that's what motivated me to be a better baseball player.
Right. That's fair. If a genie were to give you 3 wishes, what would they be?
Peace, health, and as crazy as this might sound, and I know it's just so far removed from reality, but equality.
Okay.
To everybody really have a chance.
Yeah, love that. Favorite piece of baseball memorabilia that you own?
I have a bat signed to me from Reggie Jackson when he retired his final year. He came around, he asked me, he honored me by asking me to sign a hat for him. And I looked at him, I said, serious? And he goes, yeah, I want a hat. I want you to sign a hat to me. And I said, I'll do it if you sign a bat to me. And he said, fair enough. And he signed a bat to me. And
love that.
It's pretty
Where does
cool.
that live?
It's put away very nicely.
Nice. Along with your rings?
No, it's not. I didn't even ask Eric here. Eric Stoll was from the Hall of Fame here. He's the curator there. And I didn't even ask him if he wanted my Reggie Jackson signed to Jack Morris bat, but I'm sure he would.
Yeah, I'm sure that we'll see that in the Hall of Fame at some points. All right, so the number of fan letters, just give me a guesstimate that you've been sent over your career.
You know, I almost feel blessed that I'm not the most popular guy. I wouldn't want to be Michael Jordan. I wouldn't want to be Mike Trout in today's world. You know, I like being a human being where I can walk, and once in a while somebody might say something, but they're so kind to me that they don't bother me. It's nice. I want to be normal. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of fan mail, and quite honestly, I've signed it at times, and other times I've had clubhouse kids sign it. So there's a few people back in my generation that got a great rendition of my autograph.
Special for them, I'm sure. The most famous person in your phone?
Rob Manfred, probably. Jane Forbes Clark.
That's a good one.
Jeff Idelson. I don't know.
And we're going to end on this one. Your baseball Mount Rushmore.
They'd all be pitchers. Cy Young. It's funny how, as a kid, I never even thought about pitching. But in college, I was brought to college to be a pitcher. And from that day on, I didn't think about hitting and players that much anymore. And the guys that I know had the biggest impact in the game have always been pitchers. They are the ones that can make it happen. And, when I go into the hall and I see, there's a lot of attention for me because I completed 175 games. And I'm probably the last of that generation that completed games because of the changes in the game. But if you look and actually study the men in the Hall of Fame and how many complete games most of them have, I'm this big. There's some real men in that group.
An amazing career, 4-time World Series champion, and now Hall of Famer Jack Morris. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you all for being here today. Give it up one more time for Hall of Famer Jack Morris.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.